Oui, Edem. Oui, Edem.
Bonjour, chers collègues. Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. This is Edem from the African Center for Statistics. So yesterday, we had some comments on the language settings. So I'd like to take this opportunity to explain better how colleagues can navigate, the language settings. I will say it in English, then say it in French, so that can be understandable by everyone. So for our colleagues that speak English, so this is what I will suggest. Go to interpretation, so the globe icon. Then under the globe icon, when you click, you have three options. You have the original audio, the English, and then French. So better to select English. Then you go back again. When you click on English, the menu disappears. So you go back again you click on English. So the globe becomes now in English. Then you go back then to mute original audio. There is another audio. Then you only hear the translation from the audio that will be only in English, background French for everyone. So basically, you can also introduce yourself in the chat.
Thank you, Edem. You're going to give the floor now to the chair of the session to start today's session. Thank you.
Okay. So you can introduce yourself in the chat, your name. Là, je peux aussi dire ça en français rapidement pour les francophones.
Ok, vas-y alors, vas-y.
Oui, rapidement, c'est possible. Chers collègues francophones, bien vouloir aussi vous utiliser le chat pour vous présenter. Donc, il disait en anglais que pour mieux utiliser la traduction, c'est mieux quand vous cliquez sur le globe interprétation, c'est mieux de choisir la langue française. Voilà, donc, oui, utilisez donc le globe, choisissez français et ensuite revenez pour cliquer sur le globe. Et après, il y a une option en bas de la langue de anglais-français qui dit Mute Original Audio. Donc, couper le son de la voix originale. Donc, vous allez couper le son là. Donc, du coup, vous allez avoir seulement la version française et il n'y aura pas de version anglaise en background. Merci beaucoup, Léandre.
Okay, thank you, Edem. Your line was not really good. There was a break at a certain moment.
Sorry.
So let me now give the floor to Nora Madaya, who is going to share today's session.
So good afternoon, everyone on the platform. Once again, would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to today's session of the webinar. For those who were here yesterday, we thank you for joining us again today on this second of the meeting. And for those that are joining us for the first time, you are equally welcome, and we can't wait to hear from you in this very important yesterday we had very interesting presentations from the ECA and two countries that gave their case study implications of how they have been able to develop and modernize their administrative data and registers, including the challenges. We also gave a chance to other national statistics offices to share, and Malawi, Botswana, and Namibia had an opportunity to share, and then went into a question and answer session. The cases that really laid the foundation for the subsequent discussions were anchored on the ECA's program on administrative data and global perspectives, and then the legal environment in the UK and how it has enabled the use of administrative data. And this was based on the experience from the Office of National Statistics in the UK. So that enabled us to now get into the country experiences that we had. Very interestingly, we did observe that the two countries, particularly Burundi and Cameroon, had a number of things in common. They underline the importance of having legal frameworks to enable the production of administrative data that can be used for statistical purposes. They also underlined the importance of coordination with and collaboration with the respective government ministries and departments, so that they can be able to harness and leverage the different data sources that are there to be able to improve the administrative data compilation. But among that, there were a number of challenges that they did highlight, some of which included the capacities that are in the sectors to be able to generate their data consistently, but also the capacity, the financial resources to produce the data, lack of registers, and the technical and material support to be able to produce this administrative data. And so as we head into today's discussion, we shall be looking at the quality issues with administrative data, because those are some of the areas that affect the use of administrative data. We'll also look at the guidelines and quality assurance of admin data and the data journey. In addition, we'll also have a rich panel discussion on modernizing administrative data and registers and the way forward to it. So before starting, I want to share a few points about logistics. Part of it has already been done by Adam, because yesterday we had colleagues, some of the participants failing to hear the presentations on their languages that they understood. So if you have any technical issues during the discussion today, please share them via the chat, and a member of our team will try to help you. We also ask for your patience and to allow for some delays due to internet connectivity in case there is a mishap. And secondly, we invite you to participate in our discussions by sharing any questions or comments with the panelists through the chat window. Please make use of the chat window. You can type it in your language that you understand best. It could be English or French. We have a team that will be capturing that information. Angela in English and Edem in French. But we'll also have someone who is bilingual. Leandre can help us to be able to patch up the two languages. So type your message in the chat box. Be sure to select all panelists from the chat drop-down menu. You can also ask for the floor to share your country experience and ask questions at an appropriate time when required. Finally, I want to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded. And without further ado, let's start with the first presentation on understanding the quality issues with administrative data, a case from Office of the National Statistics UK approach, the big challenges and issues and guidance on assessing quality of administrative data, which will be delivered by Charlie Roth-Smith. Charlie Roth-Smith, you're most welcome. Charlie Roth-Smith is the head of the Methodological Research Hub at the UK Office for National Statistics, and she leads a program on research to develop statistical methods for official statistics. Charlie also leads the Administrative Data Methods research program working across the UK government and academia to develop methods for administrative data and its integration with other data sources. She has experience of identifying and overcoming quality challenges with administrative data, having led the development of government-wide data quality frameworks and guidance alongside advising analysts on using administrative data for statistical purposes. So we believe that we are going to gain a lot from the exposition from the Office of National Statistics through Charlie. And so let's give her a chance to share with us. Charlie, you are most welcome and you have the floor. Please use at most 20 minutes for your presentation. Thank you very much. Over to you, Charlie.
Thank you. As Nora just said, my name is Charlie Roth-Smith and I'm a senior methodologist at the Office for National Statistics in the UK. So what I do is I lead a program of work looking at how we can develop statistical methods so that we can use them for administrative purposes. So what I'll do in this presentation is I'll go through some of the challenges that we have in the UK in terms of using admin data for statistical purposes. I'll then talk about how we go about actually trying to overcome some of those challenges, and then I'll go in a bit more in depth into some of the quality improvements that we try to make and the products that actually might be able to support you in your countries in your use of admin data. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So what I'm going to firstly do is just give a very brief overview of where we are in the UK in terms of administrative data. So Simon Whitworth yesterday spoke about the legislation, and as he said, in 2017 we had a change in legislation that meant that it was a lot more easier for us to share data across for us in the Office for National Statistics. So what that meant that we were actually, and we could have a lot more opportunities that aren't necessarily available when we have survey data. So alongside this, we also, with admin data, we don't have those associated costs that we do with survey data in terms of the field work, and we also don't have to worry about things such as the issues of reduced response rate and the qualities that brings with it. So as a result of all of these benefits, then we really are putting administrative data at the core of our transformation. So some of the things that we're really trying to invest in is we're trying to build up our capability across the office so that we do understand this administrative data for statistical purposes and how to get the best out of that. And then also one of the other key things we are doing is we're doing it in a very collaborative way. It's not about us just doing this in isolation. What we want to do is we want to work with other people who are using administrative data for statistical purposes and actually developing those partnerships so we can partner up and try to progress this together rather than doing it in isolation. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so these are some of the challenges that we have, statistical challenges that we have in the UK when we use administrative data for statistical purposes. Now, by no means is this an exhaustive list, but it should give you a bit of a flavour as to the issues that we have. So the first is definitional differences, which I'm sure many of you have got experience with. So because the admin data is not collected for statistical purposes, more for operational purposes, it means that there are lots of different definitions when you're trying to just measure the same concept. And therefore we have those different definitions across government. So when we try to bring all the data together, it doesn't fit very nicely, it's not very cohesive. The next challenge that we have is coverage issues. So that when we try to use the admin data for our population of interest, it doesn't necessarily cover exactly what we want it to. So we have some admin data that only covers a small subset of that population, or we'll have other admin data that covers far too much of the population and we need to try to remove some of it. So linked to this, we also have issues with missingness, so that when data is supplied to us, we often experience missingness within that. So that can be missing variables, it can be missing cases. So stuff that we really need to get a handle on so that actually we can produce statistics that are representative. We have a lack of metadata, so that when the data is supplied to us from data suppliers, we don't necessarily have that much information that comes with the data. So we need to spend a lot of time trying to understand the data. We try to work with the data suppliers to do that, but sometimes they don't have the time. So therefore we have to spend a lot of time ourselves trying to do that. Another issue we have is about the linkability. So linking all of the different data together. In the UK, we don't have a unique identifier, and we also get some of the data that is sent to us encrypted. And therefore we need to develop those linkage methods to enable us to get the highest quality linkage that we can. And then lastly, another issue that we have is we don't obviously own the admin data. This is owned by other departments, and therefore we don't have any control over any changes to the systems that they make, changes to variables, or even if they decide to stop data collection completely. So what we try to do is we try to make ourselves not reliant on just one particular administrative data source, but that's not always possible. Next slide, please. Okay, so as a result of all of those challenges, what we did a couple of years ago is we established the UK Administrative Data Methods Research Programme. And what this does is it aims to develop a statistical framework for using admin data for official statistics. So it was about trying to develop statistical methods, understand quality, improve it, etc. So the reason that we do this is to make sure that our statistics that we produce using this data are robust, transparent, and they have the users have confidence in the resulting data. And as I also mentioned before, that this program is very much a collaborative approach. It is about making sure that we can all work together. So in the UK, these challenges are not unique to just us. These challenges we expect to happen across internationally, other organisations, etc. So what we want to do is we want to all work together to be able to try to overcome these. And if we can do that in a faster way. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is just some of the themes that the programme covers. The first theme is about quality. So what we want to do here is we want to understand the quality, we want to improve that quality, and we also want to communicate that to our users. This is our highest priority theme. And I'm going to talk about that in the next couple of slides, so I will come back to that. The next theme is about linkage. And again, this is about making sure that we have those right methods to be able to have the highest quality linkage that we can. So it's about obviously being able to link multiple different sources, reducing that linkage error, and being able to link when we don't have those unique identifiers and with encrypted data. Privacy methods we're also really looking into, and this again is just to make sure that we do still have those state-of-the-art methods to be able to disseminate this data when we're linking so much more data than what we have before. So it's to make sure that our methods are up to date and that we can still disseminate this data in a safe way. Estimation. Here we are looking at developing a program of work to try to get harmonization of admin data across the government. This is an ambitious program of work, but it's something that we're really trying to push forwards. We're also trying to understand how we can adjust our admin data for under and over coverage. So looking at things such as coverage surveys, can we use these surveys to adjust that admin data to fit our definition? Statistical design. This is about how can we bring together both survey and admin data together to get that highest quality statistics. So we don't necessarily just want to work with admin data in isolation. What we want to try to do is to bring the strengths from both survey and admin data together so that we can have those best statistics. And then lastly, it's about the innovative techniques. So examples here include using data science techniques to try to understand more about admin data, and also looking at some of those really alternative data sources such as mobile phone data and what we can use that type of data for. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is just going back to that first theme that I said was the highest priority theme. So what we've done here is we've recently developed and published a prototype of an administrative data quality framework, which is for use across the UK government and beyond. So what this does is there are lots of data quality frameworks that are already out there, but what this does is it brings together all the strengths of those and specifically focuses on admin data. It covers the entire administrative data journey, so all the way from when the data is collected, understanding the quality impact that this could have, all the way through to when the data is disseminated. It also includes a question bank, which helps to guide discussions with data suppliers so that you can understand quality. So one of the things that we've really found is that we need to have very good relationships with our data suppliers to understand the quality of the data. It's not something that we can do within our own statistical institute on our own. We need to have really good relationships with them and work together to be able to understand the quality. The framework also includes quality dimensions. Next slide, please. And the quality dimensions that we use are the European Statistical System quality dimensions that I'm sure some of you are aware of. And what we do here is we help with ways in which we can measure quality based on each of these different dimensions. What the framework also does is it helps you to focus on which of these particular dimensions are most important to your user and be able to focus on trying to improve some of those specific dimensions. Next slide, please. And then finally, within those dimensions, we've also developed or are going to be developing quality indicators and measures that are understood by our users. We're also going to be looking to develop open source code for measuring quality so that others can pick up that code and then be able to test on their own data to understand their quality. Looking to develop guidance to how to communicate that admin data quality to users. So about making sure that the users understand the strengths and weaknesses of that data, and also what they can and can't do with that. So we're looking to develop templates and really good visualizations to communicate that quality. And then lastly, what we're also looking to do is to engage with data suppliers. So it's produce guidance to engage with data suppliers to improve data quality. So in an ideal world, we would want to the data quality to be high quality when it comes into our office. So what we're trying to do when we can realistically do that is actually try to improve the data quality at source before it comes into the office. Yeah, and so as I mentioned before, what we're very keen to do is to collaborate internationally and across the other organisations. So be very keen to understand if anyone wants to hear some more information about this, or to join in some of the collaborative research projects. And so obviously my contact name is there, as is our international development team. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Charlie, for that very interesting insight on how you have handled the administrative data quality issues amongst all the things that you have mentioned, but I'm sure that the other items that you do highlight have got a lot that we can learn from as countries that are looking forward to improving our administrative data. I like the anchor of the data revolution because it brings a lot of expectations in terms of how best we can use administrative data as a source. And so your presentation really gives us insight on how countries can now start thinking about the capabilities they have, the technical capacity they need, and the collaboration that they must take into considerations for them to have quality administrative data that can be used for statistical purposes. So thank you very much once again, and I'm sure we'll be sharing questions as we go by after this. Please be reminded that you can ask questions or share comments through the chat window. While doing this, select all panelists from the chat drop down menu. For the following communication, we welcome Isabella Schmidt, Grace Blezigulere, and Celia Emil from UN Women. Isabella Schmidt is currently the UN Women Regional Gender Statistics Specialist for the Eastern Southern Africa region, and has more than 30 years experience in international development and statistics. Her main responsibility currently is to coordinate and provide technical support as part of UN's Gender Data and Statistics flagship project, Women Count. Prior to joining the UN Women SRO office, Dr. Schmidt was the chief director, Social Statistics at Statistics South Africa, where she was responsible for overseeing the production and promoting the use of social statistics in the country. Her portfolio included gender, marginalized groups, education, governance, public safety and justice, housing and service delivery, tourism and transport statistics. So she brings a lot of experience from her past works and what she's doing currently. We also have Grace Blezigulere, who is currently working with the UN Women also in Uganda. She leads the governance pillar and specifically gender statistics. Other components that she handles include intergovernmental support and gender responsive budgeting, the leave no one behind aspect, gender and HIV, women and political participation and leadership at the UN Women Uganda country office, where she works with development partners, the UN system agencies, the national statistical system, and closely works with the Uganda Bureau of Statistics which they are supporting together with the Economic Policy Research Center and civil societies to advance the development and use of gender data and statistics. However, prior to joining the UN Women, she was a principal officer at the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, and she was responsible for statistical coordination, where she worked under the Directorate of Coordination Services. And specifically, she was responsible for the development and implementation of the Plan for National Statistical Development, that's the NSDS for Uganda, and gender statistics, as well as M&E for statistical programs. So again, Grace brings in a lot of insight and experience on how the UN is handling admin data to inform their respective components and how they're supporting countries like Uganda in this particular regard. In addition, we have the third panelist, Celia Emel, who is currently a consultant with the UN Women. She's supporting the development of quality assurance toolkit for admin data for the East and Southern Africa region, as well as admin data country assessments. Before this, Celia has been with the UN Statistics Division, supporting various projects linked to the collaborative on admin data. She has worked with capacity development in official statistics with many countries for the past 10 years, previously for Statistics Denmark. Her work has a strong focus on cooperation between National Statistics Office and other state institutions, as well as the increased use of admin data for official statistics, again brings in a lot of insight and invaluable contribution to the discussions that are at our disposal today. So allow me to welcome Isabella, Grace, and Celia to the floor. And we are allowing you 20 minutes for you to share what you have inside for us. Please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. And yes, echo, thank you, Leandro, for this invitation to take part in this important webinar. We are going to have three sections in this presentation. The first one, I will give you a brief overview of the gender data and statistics work that UN Women does. That will be followed by Celia Emel, who is currently doing some work on a quality assurance framework, as well as would be assessing administrative data systems on our behalf. And finally, Grace will share some examples of the work they've done in the justice, law and order sector on improving the production and use of administrative data. So very briefly, UN Women started in 2017 with a global program called Women Count. And we are trying to address issues around weak policy space for gender data. That includes the legal, financial, and to environment to produce gender statistics. We are also looking at addressing the technical challenges within the national statistical systems that currently hampers the production of gender data. And then finally, we want to address through this program the limited capacity of users to analyze and use data to inform policies and activities across the gender space. So with regards to the policy space, we are promoting a supportive policy environment by working closely with the National Bureaus of Statistics, as well as the Ministries of Gender in the countries in which we work. We are also supporting efforts financially and technically to improve the production of gender data, either just by simply making sure that sex disaggregated data are analyzed as such and then represented in the reports, or by actually also supporting the collection of gender-specific data sets, such as gender-based violence and time use surveys. And then finally, we are spending a lot of energy and resources on seeing how we can better communicate gender data so that it is used by officials and others in both reporting and policy and strategy formulation. So this is just a brief summary of where we are present with this gender data and statistics project. And you'll see that in East and Southern Africa, we have significant projects going in Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. We have some project activities, but limited in Ethiopia, Rwanda, DRC, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. And we are currently expanding this project into Sudan, South Sudan, and then the Namibia, Botswana, South Africa, Lesotho, and Eswatini. So with regards to administrative data, we would like to, in our second phase of Women Count, which started in January of 2022, to support the work of the UNSD GPSDD Collaborative on Administrative Data. We are currently busy developing a quality assessment framework for admin data, and Silja will share more about this. We also are planning to assess and develop improvement plans at country level for admin data that is relevant to the gender sector. And here we specifically look at data sets related to trade, land ownership, gender-based violence. And then, of course, if no other support is available for other UN partners, we would also like to try and assist the CRBS and education systems. Then finally, we are currently busy with and will continue during Women Count 2 to mobilize resources to support the modernization of administrative data sources at country level. We really believe in partnerships, and you know, we've worked with and plan to work with these and even more partners during the coming years. So over to you, Silja.
Yes, maybe just make them all come on that slide. Thanks, Isabella. Yes, so hi, my name is Celia, and thank you so much for the invitation to speak. As Isabella, I'll basically continue where Isabella left it, that I heard from Leandro that you already heard about the collaborative on administrative data yesterday. So the most important things to mention here in relation to our work, the work that I'm supporting on behalf of UN Women, is the development of two products. The one is the quality assurance toolkit for the East and Southern Africa region, and then the other one is an e-learning course for administrative data owners. And I think all of that goes back to having worked with the members of the collaborative on administrative data over the last few years, and during that work collecting knowledge on the country needs, through conversations with the members and case studies that have been documented in an inventory that you can find on the homepage of the collaborative. And one of the things that that was very clear in the dialogue with the members was that, and I think that goes back to what Charlie from the ONS presentation said, that one of the big an important thing when it comes to working with administrative data for official statistics is to have good collaboration with the data owners and to try and improve the quality at the source. So what the countries told us was that full access to and transfer of administrative data can be a challenge. And the quality of the input data is a potential challenge as well when trying to use that for official statistics. And we were told that there's a strong need for dialogue and political buy-in and support from government, like top levels, to improve both. And that something that countries that were successful in doing so shared was the time invested in advocacy and awareness raising when it comes to the usefulness of administrative data for official statistics can result in better quality data in the end. And there's a strong need for guidance and tools in this kind of work, because there's not that much out there yet. Next slide, please. Yes, and to address these needs, there are the two initiatives. That the one is training, a course or several modules for ministries, departments, and agencies that basically takes takes the starting point at a very basic level, try to introduce the concept of administrative data for statistics and the benefits. And then the second one is an administrative data quality assurance toolkit. And that would be I'll talk more in detail about both of them in a minute, but for NSOs, but also the ministries, departments, and agencies. Next slide, please. Yes, and then the training course, it's the development started, I think, around 6 months ago. Back, please. And that was, in collaboration with the Collaborative on Administrative Data, and it contains 4 modules for piloting with selected countries. There's an introduction to administrative data, then a module on different forms of engagement that includes legal frameworks, but also the more soft aspects of relationship building with administrative data owners, the mapping of data sources and quality management. And then there are more modules planned for later on IT infrastructure and the linking of data. And it was initially started and financed under the UNSD Development 13 account, and I am continuing the quality part of the work under the UN Women work I'm doing now. Next slide, please. And the timeline for that work, just to give you an idea, because there's going to be country testing also in the region. We're going to have testing of some of the modules in Namibia in September. And ideally, this is going to be an e-learning course that is going to be developed starting end of the year. So then it's accessible also to a much wider audience. Next slide, please. Yes, and then when it comes to the quality assurance, I think some of it the ONS presentation already managed, but so the quality assurance frameworks are normally designed, the big international ones that are out there are designed for survey and census-based statistical systems, but there is an increasing interest, and also I think especially COVID showed a big need for alternative data sources all around the world. And the UN NCAF has been updated, the most recent version, to include a chapter on administrative data. And there are a number of handbooks and guides, but there's nothing, like no official guidance or collection of practical tools at the moment. So this is something that we're trying to address with this work, that it's a very practically oriented toolkit that has 3 parts. So the first one is maybe still a bit, that's all the background, giving explanations on the most important things to know when working with administrative data for official statistics. And then the second part is the very practical part that is a step-by-step guide. And then there's going to be a collection of existing tools. And then something that I didn't mention in this one yet is that we're also going to develop a quite simple, or we try to keep it as simple as possible and still covering all the essentials, self-assessment that NSOs can use together with the ministries that own the data to do initial assessments if data is usable for official statistics, and then continue bigger assessments from there. And ideally this work, I mean, this is only focusing on the Eastern and Southern Africa region at the moment, but ideally this is something that then can also be used in a broader context. There's been conversations with the UN NCAF group as well, because they're interested in expanding some of the official guidance into administrative data. And then ideally it would be great also to link up with the ONS work, of course, and bring it all together the best way possible. Next slide, please. And in terms of the process of the toolkit, so far there's been a first round of consultations with the countries of the region. So we've spoken to Uganda, Lesotho, Kenya, Malawi, Namibia, Ethiopia, I think Tanzania as well, to hear some of their best practice and also the most pressing needs when it comes to such a toolkit. And there's been a review of all the international guidance and best practice that's out there, and linking up with the UNSD NCAF group. And then as next steps, we're planning to have the document that's being developed in review in various fora. So it would definitely be the countries of the region. And then the collaborative on administrative data that has a work stream, or like a group that is focusing on quality aspects, where there are 25 countries and I think around the same number of international organizations that can provide input. And then I don't have a slide on it, but as Isabella said, I'm going to support UN Women with 2 country assessments as well. And ideally, we're going to test some of this toolkit when assessing the admin data systems of those countries with a focus on gender admin data. Thanks, that's all from me. And I'll pass over the word to Grace.
Thank you, Suja, and thank you, Dr. Nora Madaya. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. In Uganda, taking a case study on how we have done administrative data, how we've developed it. We started with the gender-based violence administrative data support for the justice, law, and order sector. We engaged a consultant to support the process because many ministries, departments are comprised of the justice, law, and order sector. Some of the focus agencies included the Uganda Police Force, the Judiciary, the Uganda Prison Services, the Directorate of Government Analytical Laboratory, the Office of the Directorate of Public Prosecution, and the Ministry of Gender, Labor, and Social Development. So the consultant conducted an assessment. Of course, we did this in partnership with Uganda Bureau of Statistics as the principal agency that is responsible for official statistics. So you both took the lead and we supported the process through a consultant who conducted an assessment of the GBV administrative data collection mechanisms and management systems. The assessment revealed a number of gaps, and thereafter a training of data management personnel was conducted on the gender statistics concepts, definitions, instrument design, data collection, analysis, and presentation. But prior to that, a technical working group was established to support the process. And it comprised of those ministries, departments, and agencies in the gyro sector, the 6 that I have mentioned already. And they reviewed the data collection tools and developed a catalog of crime data concepts and indicators. And so to date, that is being rolled out. The updated tools are being rolled out after the data management officials have been trained to do the data better. So what are some of the achievements? One is the 6 justice, law, and order ministries, departments, and agencies that I have mentioned have become more responsible to GBV and related gender statistics and data requirements. They've improved the coordination mechanisms in the production of quality GBV and violence against women, gender, girls, and related gender data for gender equality and women economic empowerment and the SDGs. They've improved planning of GBV and related gender statistics through strategic plans for statistics. So they've been able to integrate the gender dimensions and variables in the strategic plan for statistics. In Uganda, the NSDS, which we call the Plan for National Statistical Development, is the broader framework, but alongside it, the ministries, departments, agencies, the local governments, and now the civil society also obliged to develop strategic plans for statistics that align to the NSDS. And so the Justice, Law and Order sector developed one, but this expired. And recently our new National Development Plan 3 is aligned to 20 program areas. And now under the program areas is where the strategic plans are being developed. And so these agencies that did the administrative data under the Justice, Law and Order sector are also developing strategic plans. Some have even completed, but have aligned and integrated GBV requirements in those strategic plans for statistics. But UN Women supported the sector with provision of equipment for data capture for all the 18 MD ministries, departments, and agencies in the Justice, Law and Order sector. In terms of data production, new data are filling in critical gender gaps to monitor GBV, VAUG, and the related SDG, and to influence national policies. So what has happened? Data collection using the revised tools of GB, including the GB requirements that have been integrated to produce GBV, quality GBV right now. The reviewed tools for collection of GBV data have been institutionalized. So across the Justice, Law and Order sector, especially in the 6 agencies that were involved in the process. Comprehensive data are also available on VAUG because of the recent dissemination of the VAUG Violence Against Children Family Survey, a comprehensive survey that was conducted in 2020-2021 and disseminated in 2021 on GBV and related gender responsive indicators. We have also supported Uganda Bureau of Statistics to develop the citizen-generated data toolkit. And this has been recently launched early this month, actually, on 1st June, to support generating alternative data to complement official statistics. In terms of data access and use and the impact, GBV and related gender data are increasingly accessible and used to shape policies. How? Through the Women Count program, UN Women is also supporting the Economic Policy Research Center as the policy analysis instrument of the country to develop policy briefs based on existing data sets, administrative data sets, and also survey data sets to develop and mine and also analyze administrative data. So far, they have analyzed administrative data from the Uganda Police Force, the Office of the Directorate of the Public Prosecution and Judiciary, and developed policy briefs. These were disseminated in a producer-user dialogue, and it triggered debate, policy debate, and increased access to justice. Some of the recommendations have been used to design some interventions in the country, in the sector. And there is also increased demand for this kind of data in the sector for policy and other decision-making requirements. MDS staff, ministry, department, and agency level staff have enhanced data collection and management, analysis, presentation, and reporting skills through training that has been delivered by the Economic Policy Research Center and Uganda Bureau of Statistics with support from UN Women. And also they've strengthened the capacity to produce and use GBV and gender-related statistics. So the training continues to be rolled out, and also the rolling out of the utilization of the tools for data capture, and there is increased analysis of the administrative data that is being used even for reporting on SDGs and other frameworks. In terms of lessons learned and the challenges encountered, what worked well specifically, the timing and positioning for development of GBV and related gender statistics and data for the justice, law and order was timely. It was at the moment when the justice, law and order sector was looking for ways of how to improve the quality of the data and also integrate GBV in their data capture framework. Alignment with the national, regional, and global best practices. It was also at the time when VAUG initiatives were at the fore globally at UN Women, and the different consultants were engaged to tease out the different ways, the methodologies, to do assessments on how to improve and best present the GBV data. Partnerships worth the investment for synergy and enhancement of coordination and harmonization of data management. This was visualized through the partnership with the Principal Agency for Data, Uganda Bureau of Statistics, linking it with the policy instrument of the country, which is the Economic Policy Research Center, and together with the UN Women that has the convening role for gender equality, and bringing together the key players in the justice, law and order sector. So the partnership worked so well to bring to the fore quality GBV data and also improve its management. Then internal UN Women demand-driven collaboration and synergy in programming, whereby the Ending Violence Against Women team within the UN Women Internal, that is under the Spotlight Initiative, was demanding quality VAUG at that time to be able to monitor, to inform the interventions, and also advocacy and awareness creation to address gender equality and women empowerment, especially on ending violence against women. So the initiative came in timely, and resources were readily provided through the Spotlight Initiative, an initiative funded by the European Union. What were some of the key challenges? One, increased demand for financial and technical support for emerging data needs due to the COVID-19 effects and the gender equality and women empowerment SDG priorities that increase to that are dynamic and keep on evolving with time. Then the human and financial resource constraints, we continue to suffer this because the demands are immense for data across the national statistical system. And as the capacities are improved, the staff that benefit from the programming initiative keep on moving to other sectors. And so you have to keep on tracking to address the gaps. Inadequate technical capacity and infrastructure. Yes, this is still a challenge because the national statistical system has largely been dependent on survey and developed more methodologies in the survey area, unlike in the administrative data systems. Need to find more and strengthen synergies with other agencies, the UN and women programs. This is ongoing, but also with a number of challenges. Thank you. In terms of the outcomes and impacts, GBV and gender-based violence and related gender statistics and data is being used for monitoring the National Development Plan 3 and updating the SDG indicators, the National Priority Gender Equality Indicators, which address SDG Goal 5, and these are shared on the Gender Statistics web portal, hosted by Uganda Bureau of Statistics, and the National Gender-Based Violence Database, hosted by the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. So they provide key resources in terms of indicators and data for policy, decision-making and intervention design. Two, the gender-based violence and gender statistics data requirements have been integrated in the UN Women Strategic Note, the current one, by pillar, in the UN System Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework by strategic pillar, and the UN Joint Program on Data and Statistics that is being developed right now. So thank you very much for listening to me. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, UN Women team, led by Isabella, Grace and Celia, for this very interesting presentation. I think as a panel, you have enabled us to bridge the broader global program on women count and linked it with the collaborative administrative data development and what is happening so far, and given the insight, the experience of what it can be like at country level. We are glad that you have been able to bring into our light the importance of the issues that are affecting admin data, which Isabella raised, and then how this could be handled from the experience that Celia gave us in terms of ensuring awareness, administrative data awareness, and also the toolkit that is being developed, and how the quality assurance is going to be done. One thing that stands out for me is the need for countries to realize that this is going to be a major shift in the way we've been doing business, and so we don't only look at the national statistics offices developing this, but working together with the ministries, departments, and agencies to ensure that the admin data that is generated can be subjected to audit for quality using the tool that is being developed and the quality assessment framework that is also being developed. So I'm glad that we can be able to appreciate what is happening in the different countries and know that this can also be done in your countries. So thank you very much, Isabella, Grace, and Celia, for that very interesting insight that you've given us. So for the following communication, we welcome Tom Mills from Office of the National Statistics UK again. Tom Mills heads the data development team at the Office of National Statistics in the UK, and is responsible for ensuring admin data used by the ONS are structured and standardized correctly, and ensures that such data are used consistently across both the Office of the National Statistics and other government agencies. By way of experience, Tom has worked at the ONS for 6 years with a variety of admin data sources, including health, tax, and education, and many more. He also has experience linking admin data with other sources, including surveys like had been earlier mentioned, and the census to transform and modernize existing statistical outputs. As you may know, data integration is now one of the in things that has to happen. So if we must make sure things are done appropriately, the admin data should be able to inform the survey data to have better statistical outputs. So Tom, you're welcome, and you have the floor. We'll give you 20 minutes only. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for that introduction and inviting me to speak today. It's fantastic and great to be part of this event. I'm trying to turn my camera on, but the option's grayed out. I don't know if permissions need to be enabled. There we go. Hopefully that will work. maybe not, but hopefully everyone can hear me, even if we can't see me.
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
Brilliant, that's good. Are the slides on the screen as well? Fantastic, there we are. Thank you very much. Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. Thanks for inviting me today. So my name is Tom Mills and I lead the data development team at the UK Office for National Statistics. So our colleague Charlie has covered some of the challenges of working with administrative data. So I'm going to look into these in a little bit more detail and explain the journey that the data takes through ONS that tries to mitigate against some of these challenges as much as possible. So to really answer the question, how do we handle administrative data to make the best use of it? So next slide, please. Fantastic. So there are multiple challenges of working with admin data, specifically for statistical purposes. And these all stem from the fact that the data are collected for operational or administrative purposes rather than statistical. So for example, when you go to the doctors, they don't record information about you for statistical purposes. They do it for medical purposes. So where do you live? So they know where to contact you. Your medical history as a way of medical background. It just happens that this information is also very, very useful for statistics. So some of the challenges as a result of this, a few of these have been covered. So missing data, I think Charlie's covered that. Inconsistent entries and collection methods. The data is collected in different ways, therefore isn't consistent across the board. For statistics, it's really important that we know when an event happened. So when somebody lived at a certain place or when somebody interacted with a certain system. For operational purposes, that's less important. So that information doesn't always exist. Again, metadata, so information about the data. For operational and administrative purposes, isn't that important, but for statistical, it's really, really important. So when that's missing, it can make things a little bit more difficult. Similarly with demographic information, so individuals' names, their addresses, other demographic information, isn't always as important for operational data, but for statistical data, it's really important. We want to know where people live, so we can look at populations at certain different levels. And then broken down by age, gender, and other demographic information. Similarly, with multi-level data, for statistical, so survey data, we generally collected it for one entity, whether that be a person or a business. Whereas for admin data, and that's often collected across multiple entities. So for example, in the UK, the tax system, you're taxed at a business level and at an individual level. So when working with that data, it can be really difficult to unpick what entity is being described. Are we looking at an individual or something different? And also at ONS, we're often not the data owner. We're just data users. So that can limit what we can do with the data. We can't do everything we want to because we don't own it. We don't control the access to that data. Moving on from that, there are some security issues that impact how we can work with the data. So we can have secure and sensitive cases. So we have to be careful with certain analysis for not highlighting such cases. Data we work with sometimes can be anonymized, or hashed. So this means that the data is masked, so you can't see the personal identifiers. So this makes the data a lot more secure, but it makes it harder to work with and can limit some of the things we can do with it. Similarly, with access, we work on tight security measures. So any certain individuals who have relevant levels of security clearance can work on certain data sets, and that can take time to come through. So it's often a case we can't access data straight away. We have to wait for periods of time while such things are checked. And I know Charlie mentioned this as well, but in the UK system, we don't have linkage keys across different data sets. We don't have a citizen number or citizen identifier. We've got numbers for our medical records, for our tax records, but they don't correspond. So linking across different streams is very, very difficult. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So I'm now going to talk through the data journey. So how admin data flows through ONS to try and mitigate for as many of these problems as possible. So it starts here with our data acquisitions team, and this is the team that works with suppliers, whether that be other government departments or commercial companies, to get the data that we require into the Office for National Statistics. So they complete all the legal stuff about what we need the data for, how we're going to use it, and how we're going to keep it safe. And this is all agreed through a data sharing agreement. So the discussions, they also discuss the format we need the data in, which part of the data we need. Do we need all of it? Do we need a subsection of it? And we have small teams within the data acquisitions that work with individual suppliers. So as it's the same team every time, they can build up a relationship with that supplier, which is really, really important, to build up trust, which is so important when sharing sensitive data across different teams. So once the data is sent to us, we have a data operations team who handle the deliveries of the data. So where that's both physical, so it could be delivered on a hard drive or a CD, or it could be a virtual, so delivered over a cloud. They then load that data into our secure data platform, and then they manage that access to the data, ensuring that only those who have a need to see the data can see the data. So that process is kept separate from the users to make sure there's a clear split, and someone's completely always monitoring that from an external team. So once it's in our secure data platform, the data is then picked up by the primary engineering team. And I'm going to talk to you more about what this team does in the next few slides. But as an overview, they carry out the initial checks on the data to make sure what we're expecting has been delivered. They then also standardize and structure the data in a way that makes it consistent with all other data sets we hold at ONS. So this means the teams looking at it, it will look the same as all the other data sets, so it'll be familiar with them. So in simple terms, this will be a table with rows and columns. So this standardized data is then made available to business areas. And by business areas, what we mean is the teams at ONS that produce the statistics. So for example, our population statistics team or our economic statistics team. At this point, the data is also going to the data development team. And again, I'll explain a bit more detail what this team does. And this is my team, and this is in this team, we try and overcome some of the definitional inconsistencies that are common in admin data, ones that Charlie touched upon. So this enables the data then to be used consistently by all teams at all times. If we could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So the primary engineering team, so their main role is to create one version of the truth. Now by that I mean a consistent data set that everyone can work off. So data can arrive into ONS in lots of every single data that we have is stored in the same format, and as I say, stored in tables in the form of rows and columns. So before the data arrives, this team will ask for test data or synthetic data, and this will enable them to create code and prepare pipelines for the main data to be delivered. Then any issues with the data at that point can be identified and communicated back to the data supplier for them to be resolved before the main or big supply arrives. So another important point to make here is that in data engineering, no assumptions about the data are made. So if the team doesn't know something about the data, or something isn't as expected, rather than making an assumption about what it could be, immediately you'll go back to the supplier and ask that question, get it checked, because making assumptions about data, especially really large data sets, will only lead to bigger problems down the line. So that's a really important point that the primary engineering team does. Next slide, please. So once the data has been delivered, the engineering team will then start what we call file validation. So this is checking that what should have been delivered has been delivered. So data, especially large data sets, can come split out into hundreds of files. So it's important to check that everything we're expecting to receive is there. If that's fine, the individual variables are then validated. So variables within the data themselves. So are they named as expected? Do they contain the correct values? Do these agree with what was specified on the data sharing agreement? Does this agree with what was shared in the test data? So there's a series of variable validations that are then carried out. And if any of these tests fail, the data is immediately rejected, and discussions will then take place to try and fix these. If you think, oh, most of the tests have passed, but a couple have failed, let's go anyway, that will always lead to bigger problems down the line. So if any test fails, data is immediately rejected and resupplied if need be. So next slide, please. Thank you. So standardization and structuring then. So once the data has been loaded, once the data has been validated and that's all passed, the data are then loaded into the tables with the rows and columns, and also will extract any information needed that could be stored in any of the header or trailer information, such as table numbers or extract dates. So once that's taken place, more checks are then carried out on the tables to look at record counts, and we'll do some basic analysis, looking at number of missingness, average values, highest values, lowest map values, for example, and then that will give you a sense of the quality of the data and if the data is highlighting what it should be. If you've got a numeric variable that's containing just full of zeros, that's probably something's going to go on wrong there, and you can start asking that question again. But if all those tests are passed, all those checks pass, then these tables are ready to be handed over to the statistical teams to start working on. And also at this stage, a version of the data will be sent to the data development team, data development unit, to carry out some secondary engineering, which I'll talk about next. On the next slide, please. So we've got a secondary engineering team as well at the ONS, or the data development unit, which is my team. So this team tries to mitigate for the definitional and conceptual issues that appear in admin data. So Charlie covered a few of these. So we build in statistical definitions into operational data. So this is quite a hard concept to think about sometimes. So for example, if there was two teams at ONS that were trying to derive an income figure from a specific data set, they could be creating two different ways of doing that, and that's wrong in two ways. One, they'll be duplicating work. They'll both be trying to do the same thing, but also they could be using different methods and they'll get different numbers, and we'll have two teams producing different statistics based on the same data, which is not what we want. So we will derive that income measure centrally, and we'll do that based on industry standard definitions, and give that number to the teams. So team A and team B are working off the same data. So from this diagram here, we've got on the left data being collected for operational purposes, and on the right, ONS wanting to use them to produce statistics from. And then in the middle, we've got this area where we try and bridge that gap and try and convert the data into statistical data. So on the next slide, we've got a little example of just how that works. Perfect, thank you. So imagine we've got a data set filled with animals, but the animals aren't listed. It doesn't say what the animals are. It just has their characteristics. So for example, shape of their ears, what food they like, how many legs they've got, the sounds they make. So just personal or characteristics of that animal, but not actually the definition of them. So first, before we could say we want to produce statistics on the population of rabbits. Before we can do that, we need to be able to define and work out what a rabbit is. So if we had two teams without the data development team, team A could identify rabbits by those with pointy ears and those that like carrots. Team B could identify them as those with four legs and that don't bark. Team A and team B publish the same statistics, but with very, very different numbers. That's not what we want. So what we'll do with data development unit is we will research the best way to define what a rabbit is in effect. We will then flag that centrally, give that flag to the business areas, the statistical teams, team A and team B. They will then know which a rabbit is and they can then produce their statistics. That will mean they have consistent statistics that align. So obviously we generally don't work with animal data sets, but just as an example, so we'll do very similar things if we were trying to identify, say, senior citizens from a data set of tax. But we don't have that flag, so we could look at the age of the individual. We can look at whether the individual pays pensions or receives a pension, sorry. Do they pay national insurance? All these kind of things, we can then identify the best way to identify that, flag it, and then it's consistent. So next slide, please. So just in a little bit more detail of how do we actually do that? How do we work out what the best way to identify a rabbit or what the best way to identify a senior citizen is? So these are just a few ways we do that. So obviously just general desk research, exploring the data sources themselves, really powerful. The data can tell you a lot. What information's in there, what information's not in there. We can speak to experts, whether that be tax experts, health experts, animal experts if we're looking at rabbits. There will also be other teams or other government departments that are doing very similar work. So they'll have produced methodology. Can we use their methodology as a starting point? Can we use that? Can we build on it? So we'll align our methodology with other teams. Obviously, it'll all be quality assured. And then once we've done this work, we will share that methodology, make it publicly, we'll make it available to the teams using it so they can understand where that variables come from, but also share it with other teams maybe doing similar work so they can build on it as well. So Next slide, and we'll just conclude. Thank you. Yeah, so I've throughout this presentation, so I've highlighted several key stages to getting the most out of admin data, from the data, all the way from the data supplier, all the way through to the statistical team at ONS. So building these teams, so the data acquisitions team, operations, engineering, can be a significant investment and can take a lot of resource, but once set up, will save a lot of time, but also it will improve the quality of statistics because it will ensure that consistency across every single data set. They should be seen as a process in one, but also comprising of a series of individual steps that all play a crucial role and feed into each other. So kind of separate steps, all part of one pipeline. And very importantly, I think with admin data, we need to remember the people that are at the center of it. And we need to build trust with the respondents and also the suppliers. So here at ONS, applying our data journey that I've outlined above has gone a really long way to helping with this. Building the trust and mitigating against the risks that come with admin data. So with that, I will open the floor if anyone has any questions on the next slide, and then my contact details and international development email. Appreciate we've gone through quite a lot, so if there's anything in there people want me to have any further conversations with, there's my email. Please do get in contact with me. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom, for that very interesting presentation. I think the story of your data journey is something that the participants on the platform, on the webinar in the different countries can also try to emulate and see whether they can write their data journey. I know the number of shortfalls and gaps that are related to what you have been sharing with us, and weaknesses within our countries that cannot enable us to be able to walk the journey the way you have walked it in ONS. But for us to be able to discern the data that is for operational purposes and the one for statistical purposes is what should drive us now to work towards engineering the data through what you have called the data development unit, where you have to do the quality checks and do the standardization and then harmonize the data to be able to make sure that there is consistency in the definitions and the data can be actually linked as we go forward, because those are some of the gaps that we have observed in our country. So thank you so much. It speaks a lot in terms of the capacities that we have in our countries to be able to have data development units, for example, have the primary and secondary engineering mechanisms in the system. But yeah, that journey is worth sharing, and I think we have been able to have a number of takeaways, as you will observe from the questions. I was seeing a number coming in from the platform. So thank you once again. And I appreciate all of you who have been on this session, and it's now time for us to have discussion and questions. I must say that my colleagues, Angela, Edem, and Leandre, were able to select a few questions from the chat windows as the presentations were going, and they're going to now share those questions so that the different panelists that came on earlier from UN Women, yourself and Charlie, can be able to respond to those questions. So I hand over to my colleagues to now bring out those questions, and then we shall have some other two participants to ask their questions in the live, in live, if time permits us. Great, thank you very much, Tom. Okay, Angela, Edem, and Leandre, if there are any questions, kindly come in and let's have them presented for discussion, for response.
Thank you very
as well.
much, Madam Moderator, Dr. Nora. So we have questions for the very first presentation we had that was made by Charlie. The questions that came through were, would the existence of a glossary be relevant to avoid the difference in the definition of concepts by the sectors? The other still to do, or in relation to Charlie's, was how to relate both sufficient quality for administrative data that is being used for administrative purposes or purely for administrative use, and the administrative data to have it elaborated for official statistics or statistical purposes. Still for Charlie.
Yeah, I think.
Yes, there's still more questions, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I don't see how to get administrations that have other concerns to improve the data generated by the activities. That was a comment and question that came in from a participant. The other is someone says they would like to know, what tool do you use to assess the quality of administrative sources used for statistical purposes? Okay, so that was Charlie. So Madam Moderator, maybe you need to guide us. Do we go presentation by presentation or?
I think given the magnitude of questions, I would suggest that we have those that are for Charlie to be responded to since you have sorted them out. So let her respond in like 2 minutes, and then we go to the one for the next presenters, the panelists. So Charlie, please. Pardon?
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to have to try to remember some of the questions that you just said because I didn't write them down. I apologize. So I think so the one that I do remember was about that. So someone had mentioned that they can't see how some of the data owners would improve the quality, and I completely understand that point. And lots of the time they can't. So that's completely right. And there is a bit of an uphill battle to try to do that. But what we do try to do is we try to make the experience of sharing that administrative data mutually beneficial. So what we want to do is we want to make it beneficial to those data suppliers as well. So actually there's some things that we can learn about the quality of the data that they don't necessarily understand themselves. So we're looking at the data in different ways to what they would. So we might see some things that they wouldn't necessarily do. So we try to do that feedback loop, that quality feedback loop, and say, these are some of the issues that you may have. This is some ways that you could try to improve it. But I completely see the point that actually sometimes that isn't their top of their priority. They don't necessarily have the money to change their systems, etc. But there's ways that we can try to make them aware of the quality issues, and where we can try to get them to change it. But I do take your point that we do need to be realistic as to what we can actually achieve. Sorry, can you repeat one of the other questions? I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. The other question had to do with the tools that are used to assess the quality of the administrative sources used for statistical purposes.
Okay, so we are developing a tool at the moment. So we're developing an admin data quality framework tool, which has, so it's a framework, so it has a number of different things within that. So as I said before, it's got a range of different guidance to have those discussions. It's also got some quality metrics within that as well. So what we're doing is we are developing our own one, which is specifically for admin data. But because this is new, we haven't had that before. So previously what we have done is there's a quality assurance admin, there's something from our regulator, from our Office for Statistics regulation. So they have published a guideline on how to monitor and understand the quality of admin data. And that's something that I can actually send across to the chair, a link to that, so that actually can be shared to the rest of the people on this call, if that's helpful.
Okay, Charlie, that would be helpful. Thank you very much. I'll move to the next presenter, the UN Women team. The questions that came through, there are quite a number of questions that came through, but we're going to restrict them to at least 2 questions since our time is fast spent. So they would like to know, which assessment tool do you use? The other is, which countries will be piloting for the training for the ministries? And last but not least, they would like to know that for some sectors, should well-structured statistics services be required for the development of statistics, particularly for justice? Over to you, UN Women team.
Thanks, Angela. I suggest, Silja, that you speak to the question on the testing. We are not currently using any particular framework. We are developing a quality assurance framework based on best practices internationally. And so the framework that Silja is working on will take into consideration what's there already, but then also try to innovate and build on that. So over to you, Silja, to add to this response. And Grace, if you can please respond to the Uganda question.
Thanks, Isabella. I'll try my best first on a bit more on the tool. So we try to like you said, of course, it's based on international guidance and best practice, but then to somehow in close dialogue with the countries strike a balance between what's possible on country level, because we also know that if it's too extensive, the framework, it's very difficult for the NSO, and then especially also getting the buy-in and engagement from the ministries. So I hope that in the country testing we'll find out what's the, I don't know, a need to have level, and then maybe add an extra element if there is a bit of extra capacity to do some further assessment, but to somehow, yes, keep it as practical and easy as possible, and still produce something that can be useful in terms of guiding, like what kind of data can be used for official statistics, because it is yeah, I know from conversations with the countries, it is complicated enough as it is with the lack of resources, and then when you have the ministries engaged in dialogue to really, I think that goes back to what Charlie said, to explain what is why this is good for them and what the benefit is. And then I think one of the things that we are trying to do both for the e-learning and for the quality is to come with good country examples, because there's been some work in this area from countries of the region. I know that Cameroon and Namibia have both been working with this feedback loop that Charlie mentioned, and to, in the conversations with the ministries when piloting, come with those examples and to actually share some good stories, some successes where it's very clear that the ministries in the end stood with better data and better, basically better basis for their policy decisions when engaging with the NSO. That was on the assessment tool. And then with the piloting of the e-learning. So at the moment, the in-person piloting is going to happen in September with Namibia. And then there is also a working group in the collaborative on administrative data, where there is possibility to give feedback and input on the materials that are there already, and then maybe at a later point also participate in the first virtual trials. So if there are countries that are interested in participating in that, it would be really great. I shared my email address in the chat if you contact me, and I'll put you in touch with the relevant people in the collaborative. It's not a formal organization or anything, so it's quite easy to join and volunteer based in a way. So I can just recommend it for all the countries that are interested in increasing their work with administrative data. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So for the data journey presentation, we'll have two questions as well. The first being, are there any experiences of using administrative data on census? If any, please share with us. And the other is on what methodology is recommended to be used in carrying out establishment censuses at the local authority level in the absence of statistical business register. Over to you, Tom.
Great, thank you. I'll start with that census question. So if you're interested, I can probably dig out some more detailed information about the admin data census journey. But a couple of things I can share with you about how admin data has been used within the census. So for the census in England in 2021, so last year, there was a couple of admin data sources that were used in combination with that census to improve it. So for example, we previously used to ask a question of how many bedrooms do you have in your house, or how many bedrooms are they in that property? Whereas in 2021, we used a data source called the Valuation Office Agency, which is basically a database of housing properties in the UK. And it contains that information. So if you sell your property or your property is valued, that information will be stored in a database, and it will store such information as number of rooms and number of bedrooms. So rather than asking that question on the census, we could link the households together. So the census household and this admin data household, and that information would be available and it could be added onto the census responses. Similarly, there was we tried to also in the past, there's been issues where people don't complete date of birth or don't provide their age. So we used patient information, so health information, and linked that to the census. So if someone's age was missing or their date of birth was missing, we could use the information from their patient demographic record and impute it in, or include it into the imputation process. Another example, there was we ask a question about if you are currently, if you are a veteran, so if you have served in the armed forces previously. And this question is notoriously answered incorrectly. So we managed to link data set containing actively serving individuals to correct incorrect responses. Basically, if someone has said they're a veteran but in fact they weren't, we could reference that against the fact that they were currently serving and change that response. So there's a couple of examples. If people are if you're interested in some more, then please do get in contact and I can put you in contact with the correct team who might have a bit more detailed information. The other question, I believe, was on businesses. So doing a local authority survey of businesses without a business register. So I'm probably not best placed to answer that question because I'm not an expert in it. I don't want to give an incorrect answer. So let me go away and I'll pass that on to the right team and see if I can get an answer without giving you a load of rubbish, basically incorrect answer. If that's okay, hopefully it is. I have seen another question pop up on cost saving. What was the cheapest one? Assuming my French reading is as good as it used to be. Which method was cheaper, I think. So what we were saying is it might be more expensive up front to create a team like a secondary engineering team like DDU, but in the long run it's going to save you a lot of money because you're not going to have two teams producing the same analysis or two teams trying to produce the same research. And also it's going to bring in cost saving because you're going to be utilizing research that's been done across government, so across other teams as well. So that's what we were saying there. So we think there'll be cost saving by introducing a secondary engineering team in our example. So yeah, hopefully that's answered the questions. Thank you. Well, obviously not one, but I'll try and get back to you on that one. Thank you.
Over to you, Nora.
Okay, thank you so much, Angela, and thank you very much for the panelists for the feedback that we have received. Like Angela mentioned, there were a number of questions, but not all of them could be presented here. We shall post these questions to you so that you can give us some written comments that we can be able to share with the participants at a later date as we share the presentations as well. So again, our time is spent and we need to now move to the next presentations. So we'll continue with a session with the panel discussion, but prior to that, let's listen to the African Union Commission that will present the Africa Union Commission program in support of administrative data and registers. So I don't know who is available, Maxim or Samson. I don't know who is going to share that, but you have the floor. And we'll give you strictly 15 minutes because we are not doing very well on time. Thank you. AUC, you have the floor.
Samson is muted.
Please unmute Samson.
I think Samson has connection issue, but is now back.
Yeah, I don't know, Leon, can you help me to share the screen? Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, ECA, to invite AUC to this webinar on the experience sharing of the modernization and the use of administrative data and record for statistical purpose. So I think our presentation today will give you brief with support of what AU is planning to do for the administrative source of data through the Pan-African Statistical Program. So the outline of my presentation will be the administrative data source of the interest of a past a Pan-African Statistical Program. We'll give you the study case, the case study for the custom record for international trade in goods statistics. We'll focus on the custom data and then also the challenge that we are undertaking, because you know custom data is one of the issues of data when we are compiling the trade statistics. So we'll present to you briefly that case study and then the conclusion of the recommendation. Next slide, please. So as you know, we have now, most of you know, from 2016 up to 2021, we implement in Africa what we call a Pan-African Statistical Program, funded by the European Union. Now, since 2022, we started with the second phase of the Pan-African Statistical Program, and then it will drive up until 2025. So the domain that we pass statistics cover is the national account, trade statistics, agriculture statistics, ICT, and digitalization statistics. Now, the main administrative data source of interest of our past program is the custom data and other source for trade statistics, the business register for national account and trade statistics, fiscal and statistical statement for national account, administrative source of data for agriculture statistics, and then also administrative source of data for digitalization. So you can see that for each domain that we are focusing, we'll look at the administrations of data that will help us, the country, to compile those statistics. So as I mentioned, for trade statistics, we'll focus on custom, for and other sorts of data. For national account, we'll focus on business register, how we can support country to improve the business register through administrative source of data for national account purpose and also for trade statistics. And then also, you know, fiscal and statistical statement is key also for the production of national account, is one of the source of data. And then also administrative source of data can administrative data can be key also for agriculture statistics and then also on digitalization and the ICT statistics. Next slide, please. So I will present to you now the case study. As I mentioned that to you, I will present you the case study. We'll focus now on administrative data for production of international trade in goods, international trade in goods statistics. So we'll tell you how we proceed there. So first we'll talk about classification. we talk about the valuation issue, coverage, consistent, and data sharing. So if you allow me to go quickly, the classification that when we want to analyze source of data, and this source of data with custom data, the first challenge that we face is the variation of a coding system, because it's always a challenge for when you collect the data from custom. You can find some numeric code, you can find also some alpha code. So that also can be a challenge for you, because you are not in front of people so that you can ask them why you use numeric code here, why you use alphanumeric here, code here. Is a something that we collect from custom office. Also, some custom office are still using some obsolete country code. So that also creates a lot of challenge when we are processing the trade data. And then also with various HS code are still using, some are using the update code, some are using the very old code. The valuation issue, the goods who are not subject to tax are covering or poor covering by the custom. For example, most of the time, the agricultural products are not much cover because they are not subject to tax. And then also some key products that are not subject to tax, it's difficult to get a good value or volume from custom. And then also some strategic commodity like oil, gas, or electricity are not recorded by the custom, so it's always a challenge also. And then also one key challenge also is the informal cross-border trade who are not covered by custom, so this also is a challenge. Now, what is also is a big challenge is the consistency of the data. The custom, they feel always the value that can help them to have a good revenue. So there's sometimes they don't care much about the weight of a product, or if they don't feel very well the weight of a product, definitely the unit value can be a challenge. And then also we realize that the total export that from custom are less than the one from national account, are less than one in balance of payment. Idem also for the import. And then also the data challenge. So you can see in total the credibility issue for international trade in goods statistics from custom record can be a challenge if you as statistician you didn't make some correction on administrative source of data after you collect this data. So this case now shows you clearly that, of course, administration source of data is some source that we can use to produce a statistic. It's free of charge. It don't cost us too much when we are conducting a census or survey. But there is a challenge. The challenge is that after you collect this data, you need to do some analysis, and then also you need to make sure that you make some correction. So we always focus on administration source of data, but we need to keep in our mind that is this data we need to make some data processing after we collected this data from the administration source of data. So for the case of the custom now, as a trade statistician, when you collect the data from custom, you need to make some additional data processing. Next slide, please. So the underpass, we are planning to collect the data, the trade data from the 55 member states of AU. We harmonize the data transmission protocol. With data transmission to AU, with data processing and assessing. We promote also the use of a common product and country nomenclature by country, though that can make our life easy to compile and then also to compare the data in terms of harmonization. Also, we do some mirror exercise for trade statistics. We do develop also tools for outline detection with trade statistics and compiler. Also, the methodology provide to conduct informal cross-border survey. We guideline for collection of special commodity and good, and dialogue also, because this one is a key also. When you talk about administration source of data, you need always to have a dialogue between those who are producing the data, the administrative data, and we as a statistician, as a user of administrative data, we need to have a dialogue with them. The dialogue will help will help us to tell us that why we need this data, and then which kind of why those who are collecting data, they need to put in place some mechanism who help us to have a very good data. And then also with bilateral technical support is always good. And then also some IT tools is always recommended, like Eurotrade, to compile trader statistics. And when we collect the data from transactions. Now, in terms of conclusion, I think we need to the administrative data source is the key, but there need improvement. The improvement as well, because I show you the case of trade now. This data, if you say that we just focus, we just collect it, and then we don't do very good data processing, it will be a challenge. Also, one of the things who is also very important also is that which is very important also, that we need to strengthen the dialogue between those who are producing administrative data, and then also we as statisticians who are using also this data. And then also there is need to have a package of continental coordination between all the stakeholders, so that we can now improve the use of administrative data by country. And then also what is key also is dialogue between user and producer. I already talked about it. You don't tell us, and the user is key, because you don't tell them, then will not do. So it's very important. You didn't tell, they will not do. So meaning that if you don't tell them something, definitely they will not do that. So it's something who is very key, that the administration source of data is key, but the dialogue between user, as we as statistician, and producer should be very key. So please let's make sure that we put always in place that dialogue between user and producer of administration data. So Madam Chair, that is the end of my presentation, and I'm open for any question and discussion. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Samson, for that interesting and informative presentation. You've been able to show us what African Union is trying to do in respect to strengthening administrative data sources. Of course, you do mention the importance of it because it is cost effective as a data source. Many countries are struggling because they cannot undertake some of their surveys. And so the alternative source, the best alternative and cost-effective source would be administrative data. But like again you mentioned, there are challenges to do with classifications, coverage, consistency, and which make it difficult for this data to be shared. However, there are those that are doing well, and you are already highlighting the issues that had been intimated by earlier presenters since yesterday, the need for coordination and collaboration. This cross now, other than the National Statistics Office and the ministries, you're putting it at a more regional level, cross-country coordination, so that we can be able to leverage those best practices in some countries and so on. But I'm happy that the previous discussions are already showing the direction in terms of the tools that are being used in the UK, also that have been used in the case for Uganda, and what has been done also in Burundi and Cameroon. So we can build on that to make a better approach to improving administrative data and modernizing it. Now, our last session will be a panel discussion. Let me give the floor to Angela to moderate the discussion as we go deeper into modernizing administrative data and registers. The way forward, how do we proceed after this? Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for the questions that you have been raising and the presentations made during my chairship. And so I hand over now to Angela. Angela, please have the floor. Thank you, Samson, and thank you, everyone else.
Thank you very much, Nora, for steering us to this point in the meeting so far. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Angela Chichoncho, and I'm a statistician at the African Center for Statistics of the Economic Commission of Africa. The panel discussion will be definitely on modernizing administrative data and registers, and we are focusing on what should be our way forward. Having discussed exhaustively since yesterday to today, we need to know what should we go back home with. So we will have 3 panelists for this session. I'm going to quickly introduce them. Our first panelist, this is not in any order, they're all important. So our first panelist is Miriam B. Jala. She works for Statistics Sierra Leone. As a principal statistician, she holds a Bachelor of Science degree with honors in mathematics. And she also has a master's degree in business administration from the University of Maryland College. She has over 10 years of experience, managerial experience working in institutions like the National Revenue Authority, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, KPMG, and the Justice Sector Coordination Office. So Miriam, you're welcome as a panelist in this session. Our next panelist is Mr. Yusuf Saidu, and he is an economist and statistician engineer. He is the Director of Coordination and Statistical Management at Niger National Institute of Statistics, and this position he has held since 2017. He is an expert in developing and implementing national strategies for development of statistics, developing and implementing quality approaches, and carrying out specific reforms in the Niger National Statistical System. Last but not least is Mr. Simon Whitworth, who is the head of data ethics and research accreditation at the UK Statistics Authority. Simon leads work in developing an operation of national, rather statistical legislations that enable access to administrative data for analytical work across the UK. Simon also leads work of the UK Statistical Authority Centre for Applied Data Ethics, which provides well-used tools to enable analysts to effectively and robustly consider the ethics they use for data and deliver a program for international research on data ethics related issues. So our panelists, you're welcome. If you could put on your cameras for the participants to see you, and without having to spend much more time, I will jump into the first question. So I'll call up on Isufu first. For the first question, can you give us an estimate of the proportion, or at least an idea of official statistics that are produced solely from administrative data? In line with that, could you just, because we know that in Africa, many African countries, it's low, the use of administrative data is low, but could you touch on issues, challenges, and opportunities that African countries have in this regard? Over to you, Isufu. Please do not use more than 2 minutes because we still have a range of questions and other panelists to comment on the same. Over to you, Isufu.
Okay. Bonjour à tous, bonjour Monsieur Angela. Je vous remercie pour l'opportunité que vous m'offrez pour m'exprimer sur ce plateau, donc et partager en tout cas modestement donc notre petite expérience par rapport à la thématique. Et pour ce qui concerne la question, en fait, c'est une question piège puisque vous faites les présentations qui se sont suivies depuis hier. Donc, ont évoqué en tout cas une problématique importante, c'est-à-dire pour ce qui concerne la modernisation des statistiques administratives. Et donc, vous conviendrez avec moi quand nous prenons, en fait, pas un chiffre précis, donc par rapport à la proportion, en tout cas des données administratives par rapport aux statistiques officielles, surtout quand nous prenons nos pays africains, en tout cas, dans la plupart des cas, et en tout cas, cette proportion est très faible. Quand je prends l'exemple de notre cas, concernant surtout le plan de développement économique et social, puisque ça va dépendre de ce qu'on va mettre au dénominateur. Quand je prends le cas du plan de développement économique et social, où on a un cas de mesure de résultats pour l'impact, les effets globaux, les effets spécifiques et les effets immédiats. En tout cas, quand nous avons fait la situation en plus de, en tout cas, moins de 40%, ce sont les statistiques administratives, puisqu'une grande partie aussi, c'est les données d'enquête. Et maintenant, pour ce qui concerne la question des défis, ça a été évoqué. Peut-être que ça risque, en tout cas, de reprendre ce qui a été déjà dit. Et c'est surtout la question institutionnelle, pour ce qui concerne les données administratives. Puisque vous conviendrez avec moi aussi que la question de la législation aussi qui a été évoquée par rapport à la protection des données individuelles. Et pour ce qui concerne notre cas au Niger, et au niveau de l'INS, donc nous avons en tout cas la loi statistique. Et en plus de la loi statistique aussi, nous travaillons avec une autorité en charge de la protection des données individuelles. Et mais encore, donc, quand nous prenons en plus de cette question institutionnelle pour la production des statistiques officielles, il y a aussi la question des capacités. Et pour le cas du Niger, au fait, nous avons au sein du système statistique national, en plus de l'INS qui est l'organe central, donc les gestions des statistiques des départements ministériels, et qui sont chargés, chacune en ce qui la concerne, de produire les statistiques sectorielles. Et ces statistiques sectorielles-là sont pour la plupart produites à partir de données administratives. Je prends un exemple pour ce qui concerne la justice, où c'est à partir des registres tribunaux, des registres des parquets, et les juridictions, au fait, envoient des rapports d'activité sur la base desquels on produit les statistiques des affaires entrées au parquet, les affaires instruites, et ainsi de suite. Et là aussi, donc, c'est un des aspects importants que je vais relever. Et dans les différentes présentations aussi, il a été fait cas, au fait, par rapport à la stratégie nationale de développement de la statistique. Et pour notre cas au Niger, donc, ça fait partie des défis que nous avons relevés. C'est surtout la question aussi de valorisation et de modernisation des statistiques administratives. Et par rapport aussi à cette SNDS dont le coût a été chiffré, maintenant, c'est la question aussi de mobilisation des ressources, au fait, pour accompagner la mise en œuvre de cette stratégie. Et l'autre aspect aussi, quand je prends pour les cas de nos pays, qui rejoint aussi les questions de capacité, c'est surtout aussi l'utilisation efficiente aussi des technologies de l'information. Et de la présentation de l'Union africaine aussi, il a été fait cas pour ce qui concerne l'exemple qui a été donné pour les statistiques de la douane. Et vous voyez aussi pour certains cas aussi, quand on prend la question de remontée d'informations, à la base, c'est-à-dire les agents qui génèrent les statistiques administratives, souvent, ce n'est pas leur activité, c'est-à-dire qu'ils ne sont pas destinés à faire les statistiques, mais c'est qu'à travers leurs travaux routiniers, donc ils génèrent les statistiques. Maintenant, pour au fait pour valoriser ces statistiques-là et les remonter aussi au niveau des services en charge de la centralisation, ces gens-là donc considèrent cela comme étant une activité supplémentaire. Ce qui fait que donc à la nécessité aussi, donc c'est aussi un des défis pour ce qui concerne les questions de sensibilisation par rapport au fait à l'importance et l'utilité aussi des statistiques administratives que les producteurs à la base aussi donc essayent de générer. Et l'autre aspect aussi que je vais relever, et il a été aussi fait cas, c'est la question aussi de contrôle qualité du processus. Parce que quand nous prenons les données administratives, comme j'ai parlé de la question de remontée, donc il y a à la base, au fait, les acteurs qui génèrent ces informations, et il faut aussi assurer la remontée de cette information. Donc, et toute cette chaîne-là donc mérite un regard assez pressant par rapport au contrôle qualité. Et il y a aussi, en plus de ce contrôle qualité, la question aussi de la démarche qualité. Donc, au fait, pour qu'on puisse s'assurer de la cohérence de ces données et aussi donc pour qu'on puisse aussi, en tout cas, s'assurer aussi de leur qualité. Et nous sommes tout à fait, et là c'est mon opinion à moi, nous sommes tout à fait donc d'accord par rapport à l'importance des données administratives. Maintenant, la question maintenant, c'est un investissement qu'il faut faire. Qui dit investissement, il y a la question des coûts fixes. Et pour nos pays aussi, ce coût-là est très cher. Mais après aussi, c'est-à-dire les sacrifices qu'il faut faire, et après avoir consenti aussi ces efforts, donc les présentations aussi ont mis en exergue, et cet investissement-là est très rentable à long terme. Et puis quand on fait aussi le cumul des enquêtes, et pour lesquelles aussi les données administratives peuvent en tout cas être une substitution. C'est-à-dire si on fait chaque 3 ans une enquête, par exemple, sur le ménage, ou bien chaque 10 ans un recensement, les recensements qui sont aussi chers. Là, si peut-être donc, on fait un investissement donc, à long terme qui peut être rentabilisé, en tout cas, ça va permettre de rationaliser aussi le financement destiné à la statistique. Donc, voilà, c'est ce que je voulais dire par rapport à la question que vous venez de me poser. Merci.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. You truly, I mean, like you had a lot oozing out of you. I wanted to stop, but I said, no, let's listen to all these issues so that, you know, countries can better relate to the challenges that you have as well as their own. For the next question, I'll call upon Miriam. So Miriam, the modernization of administrative statistics and records for statistical purposes definitely poses enormous challenges. A number of them have been highlighted by Samson, but we also know that issues of privacy, issues of confidentiality, informed consent, you know, legal, financial, and technical difficulties all come at the forefront when you talk about administrative data and any other data. So in your previous experience, integrating and using administrative data and registers for statistical purposes, could you kindly share with us how you resolve these issues? Over to you, Miriam. Please, you have 2 minutes to do this. Be mindful of time.
I know. My video, the bandwidth is actually low. Those are one of the things we're experiencing here. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be part of this webinar. Thank you, ETA, and especially Leanne for inviting me over. Okay, I'll just touch briefly on that. Can everybody hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
You're audible, yes.
Okay, good. I would say presently we're using the traditional method of best practice where administrative data sources have been complemented by surveys, both household and enterprise surveys. And so far we just completed the midterm census in Sierra Leone, which started in December. We just launched the first, like the provincial results. We're working on launching the regional results, which will be done in the next couple of weeks. It's in terms of the financial and technical difficulties. This time, I would say it's the first ever digital census we've done. Usually we used to use paper-based. Now we actually use tablets, wherein the enumerators were out in the field for about 2 or 3 months collecting real-time data using the tablets. For some of them, it was a new concept, but we made sure the trainings were rigorous, wherein the data collectors actually had a field of integrating, like using the paper-based where they had technical difficulties in terms of getting connectivity in remote areas. So they had ways wherein they could match the two to make sure we get the kind of data we want. In terms of, I would say, we've been able to resolve the technical aspects of the data collection with regards training sessions, and we're still looking forward to getting more opportunities. We had a presenter from UN Women who talked about there's an e-learning course for administrative data, Isabella, and I think I just sent a message in the messenger area that Celine will be interested to be part of that e-learning, because the department actually where I really work with the nexus between Statistical and the data producers and users. So sometimes we go out, we have workshops, we have collaborative sessions wherein we have to teach the partners, we teach the data collectors how to manage their administrative data from collection to storage. So we find out that in terms of the storage, that is where they have difficulties. And for some of them, in terms of collecting the data as well, trying to distinguish the administrative data and the official statistics. But again, going so we had our first ever digital census, so we're moving away from the paper-based to the digital, but still we have some administrative data sources, records that are being collected manually, and we're yet to integrate it in platforms. So we're still moving, and we're part of a lot of platforms, and we're working currently on trying to integrate the SDG database into a platform, and we're having a lot of collaborations. While I was waiting for my session here, I actually joined a platform where we had meeting with partners as well to see how best we could move from creating from getting quality data to integrate them into platforms. So I think at this point I would like to stop and give the other speaker a chance to talk about. If I have more time, I'd like to throw light on our work on administrative data. We currently receive a grant from World Bank, wherein we are part of the countries to benefit from the harmonizing statistics in West Africa. So we actually have a component wherein we are going to improve our administrative data sources by introducing, by matching it with international standards, methodologies, and tools. So we'll be happy to collaborate with partners as well to help us improve in that area. So Statistical will improve the data specifically in terms of identifying support that key MDAs that collect this data need, and provide trainings and on data processing of the administrative data. We're exploring tools and experiences that will strengthen the quality of data. I think I touched that before. So we're open to a lot of platforms that are willing to share their experience with us and help us move from this point. So we'll also be providing technical assistance to the selected MDAs we've been working with, and on data processing using international standards and tools, and provide support as well to shift from the paper-based to electronic data collection. We are going to be supporting, we have already started, but we are going to be more inclusive this time to support the relevant line ministries to build their capacity in data processing, analysis, and archiving. So I think there's a lot more, and we're currently working on the third version of the NSDS, which we had to put a halt because we were having issues with partners during the census. So we actually said we're going to do like a second version of the NSDS2, because most of the programs in the NSDS2 were not fully implemented. So we're going to call the NSDS3 like to align with the medium-term national development plan. So we're actually going to be focusing with partners, with data producers and users to create the second version of the NSDS, which we'll plan to implement from now to 2023, and then start the NSDS 3 from 2023 to align with our national development plan. I think
thank you,
I have exhausted my time. Yes.
Yeah, you have gone beyond your time, but
yes,
okay.
yes.
Thank you for that. So I'd like to call upon Simon to give us some more insight into this question. For UK as an advanced country, you have successfully integrated administrative data and registers in the production of official statistics. This has been ably demonstrated by your colleagues in the presentations you've given us. So could you throw more light on the challenges you're currently facing with administrative data? Over to you, Simon. Please, you have 2 minutes. Can you observe time? Thank you. Simon?
Hi, Angela. Yeah, hi, Angela. It's Charlie Woff-Smith from the ONS, from the Office for National Statistics. It's me on the panel, but that's fine. So I'll go ahead and answer the question.
Okay, Charlie.
That's okay.
Yeah. Sorry,
No, that's absolutely fine. That's fine. So as I previously spoke about in my presentation earlier, we went through some of what those statistical challenges are. And I think it's worth pointing out that even though, as you say, we are more advanced in terms of using administrative data, there are still lots of challenges. Those challenges don't go away. That's something that we do have to constantly work on. So other examples of what some of those challenges are things like the timeliness of data. We tend to find that when we're supplied data, we can have like an 18-month lag. So we don't have very timely data in that way, and we need to make adjustments. We're also the COVID pandemic had a lot of impact on our administrative data. So in terms of the quality of that data, we're trying to understand what the pandemic has had on that. So for things like our health data, then we think that it's likely that that data may well have improved because of the vaccinations, and people are improving, updating their records so that they can get the COVID vaccines. However, we think that some of the admin data like deaths data may have slightly declined because some of those processes were a bit more lenient during that COVID. And so those are some of the challenges. Another challenge in terms of the data is the fact that we're still trying to get access to data. So there's so many different data sets out there, and lots of opportunities that it takes a lot of time to try to get the data and to gain that confidence with those data suppliers that we will use that data in a safe, trusting way. And so it's a lot about that engagement with those data suppliers for that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Probably before I go back to the other two for our last question today, could you just give us some of the key aspects or the key points that you think should be incorporated into a roadmap for modernizing administrative data for statistical purposes in African countries? Because we all know there are proportions of countries still using administrative data, whether as complementary or solely for statistical purposes, is still low. So what are the key aspects that you would advise or would recommend or highlight for modernizing administrative data for statistical purposes? And for those countries that are really looking to modernize their administrative data, based on your experience, please advise. So please, again, 2 minutes. And after you have done your 2 minutes, I request Yusufu to do 2 minutes for the same, as well as Miriam. Over to you, Charlie.
Thank you. So I think one of the key things that I would focus on is about building up the capability of learning about administrative data. So as I said, that the UK is perhaps a bit more advanced, but it's taken a long time for us to build up those skills, and we are still very much on that learning curve. So it's very important that actually we really build up those skills, and it's not just those statistical skills, it's also data engineering skills. So a range of different skills so that you can develop that team with those different skills to try to be able to make sure you can get the best out of that administrative data. Another thing that I would really focus on is about that relationship with the data suppliers. So those data suppliers have really got to trust you and be able to be willing to share that data with you. And also we really want them to be able to help us with the quality of that data and understanding that. So it's very much about those relationships with those data suppliers as well. And then lastly, I would just say it's about having regular webinars like this and about sharing that best practice. So all of us are individually trying to progress administrative data on our own, but actually we can do this a lot better and faster and learn more if we all come together and share those experiences.
Thank you very much, Charlie, for your submission. Call upon Yusuf on the same question, the main aspects for a roadmap, and what advice or encouragement would you give to African countries that are looking to modernize administrative data? Yusuf, are you there?
Ok. Oui, merci Angela. Au fait, déjà la prédécesseur donc, a tout dit par rapport à cette question de renforcement des capacités. Moi, ce que je vais ajouter, surtout pour notre contexte africain, c'est surtout renforcer la coordination. Et là, quand je parle de la coordination, puisque j'avais évoqué comme défi les questions institutionnelles et de législation, en tout cas, il faut les renforcer pour qu'on ait une base institutionnelle. Et aussi, puisque quand je parle aussi de la coordination, et aussi asseoir un cadre d'échange entre les principaux producteurs eux-mêmes, puisque quand nous prenons les cas des systèmes statistiques africains, surtout quand je prends le nôtre, on a l'INS qui est l'organe central, mais avec aussi les directions des statistiques et les départements ministériels. Donc, il faut aussi renforcer ces liens-là pour qu'on puisse, en tout cas, tirer les meilleurs profits des données administratives. Et en plus de ça aussi, pour ce qui concerne le contexte africain, il y a la question de digitalisation aussi, c'est-à-dire utiliser aussi le numérique et pour, en tout cas, comme j'avais évoqué, la question des charges de travail supplémentaires pour les acteurs, les producteurs à la base des données administratives, c'est-à-dire si, au fait, on renforce les questions technologiques, ça va leur permettre de gagner du temps, au fait, pour assurer une meilleure remontée d'informations. Et donc, il y a cette question de digitalisation. Et puis aussi, il y a la question météorologique. Je crois qu'au niveau aussi du contexte africain, au niveau de la CEA, c'est-à-dire au niveau régional, au niveau continental et au niveau national, c'est-à-dire c'est aussi peut-être d'avoir un cadre générique pour ce qui concerne les questions météorologiques et puis aussi pour ce qui concerne cette question d'assurance qualité à l'image au fait de ce qui a été fait par les Nations Unies. Et là aussi, je souligne que je fais partie aussi des groupes d'experts aussi pour ce manuel aussi, ce cadre générique d'assurance qualité des Nations Unies. Donc, il y a cette question aussi donc de méthodologie et aussi, en tout cas, du dialogue entre producteurs et utilisateurs. Et en tout cas, une fois qu'on arrive à faire les investissements pour les données administratives, et cet investissement-là aussi peut être rentable à long terme, et aussi, ça, il va aussi pour ce qui concerne la qualité et la fiabilité aussi des officiels. Et qui englobe le reste, c'est surtout la question de mobilité pour nos pays africains, c'est-à-dire on a souvent donc, on arrive souvent donc à bien élaborer des stratégies, des plans, avec des plans d'action. Maintenant, en tout cas, c'est l'accompagnement en termes de ressources aussi pour mettre en œuvre aussi ces différentes activités prévues. Donc, à cette question aussi de plaidoyer et de communication. Et je voulais ajouter. Merci.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. That was really a mouthful, but appreciated. Miriam, please, strictly 2 minutes, I beg. Miriam, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Come again. I am presently on another webinar, so sorry about that.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, but I paused.
Okay. So the question.
Come again.
Yeah, the question is, what are the key aspects of a roadmap for countries, African countries that are looking to modernize their administrative data based on your experience? What would you advise? What would you recommend? Okay, now it's 1.5 minutes.
Okay. Yes. I would advise we need guidance on the tools needed to work around administrative data. One of them, good collaboration, creating the synergies within the sectors, data quality of administrative data updated regularly. Yes, an administrative register should be constructed because we are doing the business administration survey. So one of the recommendations here was that we have detailed administrative registers with like disaggregated, having well disaggregated, so it will create the nexus between the census data and the administrative data. So those are the three. And then the last one will be to have a very good relationship, which we already have within the data ecosystem, like having good rapport with the data producers, data users constantly. We're having a workshop in October for all our data producers and users in Sierra Leone. It's going to be huge, and it's going to be launched in the 16 districts, like to educate them on the new methodologies and the 21 census midterm census reports. So we're going to be having all of that very soon. So having regular data management techniques like rolled out across the sector would be one of my recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our panelists. We apologize for the very short time within which we had to have this discussion, but nonetheless, we do appreciate the vibrant exchanges, and it's almost time to end our session and this webinar. However, someone in the chat, I think Morocco, proposes that to this, we should add as part of our takeaways the need to reduce burden on the line ministries in this process. Yeah, so as we look to administrative data as an alternative source or a complementary source for official statistics or for statistical purpose or for use for statistical purposes, we are being reminded to be mindful of the burden, the issue of burden. So yeah, thank you. I've taken note of that one. So to wrap up, I am not going to list everything. I believe we're all been paying attention. However, I will mention that the presentations are going to be shared. Leandra already shared the link to where the presentations will be posted on the ECA website, but also the presentations will be shared to your emails. So that is a reassurance from us. But I also want to add that links to an evaluation questionnaire, a very short evaluation questionnaire have been added in the chat, both in French and English. So kindly click the link and give us your feedback, because we need to know how we are doing and how to get better at this. If you have suggestions, if you have comments, recommendations, they're all welcome. Please do fill in the evaluation questionnaire. We're left with only 1 minute. Really do apologize for this. However, if the chief is around, I would like to hand over to him, Mr. Joseph Igudo, to close this half-day webinar and give us a farewell message. Over to you, Chief.
No, the chief is not there. I'm going to replace him.
Okay, so yes, so over to you.
He's busy on another meeting. So now we just want to thank all of you participants to this webinar. And we're also thanking the presenters, all the presenters and panelists for your commitment and your engagement and what the experience you have shared here. They are very useful for us here in Africa, for our member states, in this work on modernizing, transforming and modernizing administrative data to adequately respond to the data demands. We have learned a lot of things during these 2 days, and this note, the end, is a starting point. And as we presented yesterday, we are starting our program on administrative data that's going to be implemented for 3 years. Soon you will be receiving a questionnaire to assess the use of administrative data, also to understand concretely barriers you face in each of the countries. We also have some interviews with some of you. We'll be happy if you will really appreciate it if all the 54 African countries could really participate here to help us to understand this, because based on that, we will now organize the next step on our program and see how we will be assisting countries. As mentioned yesterday, we will work with a few number of countries to assist them in specific areas they have selected themselves. So you will be informed. We will also present the progress made in various forums. So this starting point, and I want to finish by saying that this work is done under the African Group on Transformation and Modernization of African Official Statistics. And several other things are being planned in the action plan of that group. For member of the group, of the technical group, or the technical teams of the group who are here, we just want to inform you that soon we will be relaunching some of the activities and to move forward in a different direction. We have the African Group Transformation and Modernization defined. Thank you. Have a safe evening, and let's meet during our next events. Thank you and bye.
Bon, au revoir, Léandre.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Léandre.
Thank you.
Merci, Léandre.
Thank you, Dr. Nora.
Merci à tous.
Great initiative.
Au revoir, merci à tous aussi.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Nora and all the panelists. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.